3 months ago, a mechanic in rural Tennessee tried to order a replacement fuel pump for his 2004 Chevrolet Silverado. Not a rare vehicle, not an exotic engine, the most common pickup truck platform on American roads. He was told the part was on back order. Not 2 weeks, not a month. He was told to expect a 6 to 9 month wait. He called 11 other suppliers. Shame, answer. That mechanic now cannot use his truck. It sits in his driveway completely immobilized. Not because the engine is dead, not because the frame is rusted through, but because a single $140 part has vanished from the supply chain. And he is not alone. Across America right now, a quiet parts shortage is spreading through the automotive supply chain, and the majority of truck owners have no idea it is coming for them. But a small group of mechanics and truck owners who saw what happened during the COVID supply chain collapse have been preparing for exactly this scenario. They have identified the 5 specific parts that are disappearing fastest, that are most likely to strand you permanently, and that are cheapest to stockpile right now before the shelves go empty. Today I am going to give you that list. Most truck owners assume that if a part is available today, it will be available next month. That assumption was destroyed permanently in 2020 and 2021 when semiconductor shortages cascaded through every layer of automotive manufacturing. What people do not realize is that the automotive parts supply chain never fully recovered. It adapted, and the adaptation has created something more dangerous than a temporary shortage. It has created a system where a single geopolitical disruption, a single port closure, or a single factory fire in Malaysia or Taiwan can permanently eliminate the supply of a specific component that millions of American trucks depend on. The difference between a truck owner who understands this and one who does not is not dramatic. It is a single phone call to 11 different suppliers and a 6 to 9 month wait for a $140 part sitting in a driveway going nowhere. But here is what makes this genuinely urgent right now. The 5 parts on this list are not exotic. They are not performance upgrades. They are basic wear items that every truck will eventually need. And industry data shows their inventory levels at distributors across the country have dropped between 40% and 70% over the past 18 months, with no recovery in sight. What mechanics who experienced the 2021 shortage firsthand learned is something they now call proactive parts ownership. The strategy is simple. You identify the components most likely to fail on your specific truck within the next 3 to 5 years. You buy them now, at current prices, before scarcity drives prices up or eliminates availability entirely. You store them correctly, and when the part fails, instead of being stranded for 9 months, you walk to your shelf, grab the part, and your truck is running again the same day. Today I am going to give you the exact 5-part list for the most common truck platforms in America. What to pay for each one right now, and how to store them so they are ready when you need them. To understand why this list matters, you need to understand the 3 forces that are systematically emptying the parts shelves right now. The first force is consolidation. 20 years ago, the American automotive parts supply chain had hundreds of independent manufacturers producing identical components. Today, through merger and acquisition, the majority of specific part categories are controlled by 2 or 3 manufacturers globally. When a single factory in China that produces 70% of the world's supply of a specific sensor has a production issue, the shortage is not regional. It is global, and it is immediate. The second force is the transition to electric vehicles. Every major parts manufacturer is quietly shifting production capacity, engineering resources, and supply chain priority toward electric vehicle components. Traditional internal combustion engine parts are being treated as legacy products. Tooling is aging and not being replaced. Production runs are shrinking. A part that was available in 48 hours 2 years ago now takes 3 weeks because the manufacturer is running 1 production cycle per quarter instead of continuous production. The third force is the one nobody is talking about publicly. Insurance companies and regulators are increasingly pressuring salvage yards and recyclers to destroy core rather than resell them. Parts that would previously have entered the secondary market through rebuilders are being crushed. The used and rebuilt parts ecosystem that kept older trucks running cheaply for decades is being systematically dismantled. The result is a market where new parts are scarce, used parts are disappearing, and the gap in between is empty. So, how do mechanics identify which parts to stockpile? They apply what experienced shop owners call the 3-failure test. First, does the part have a predictable failure interval? Parts that fail randomly are not stockpile candidates because you cannot predict when you will need them. Parts that fail on a schedule, based on mileage, heat cycles, or age, are exactly what you want on your shelf. Second, does the failure strand the vehicle? A broken door handle is annoying. A failed fuel pump means you are not moving. Stockpile the parts that leave you stranded, not the parts that leave you inconvenienced. Third, is the part truck-specific or is it shared across platforms? Parts shared across multiple truck platforms disappear fastest from distribution because demand is highest. These are precisely the parts where scarcity hits hardest and earliest. Every part on this list passes all 3 tests. Each one has a known failure interval. Each one strands the vehicle when it fails. And each one is distributed across enough truck platforms that supply chain pressure is constant and intensifying. Part 1. The fuel pump. Every fuel-injected truck built since the mid-1980s has an electric fuel pump mounted inside the gas tank. Typical failure interval is 80,000 to 120,000 miles, but heat, ethanol content in modern fuel, and running the tank low consistently accelerates failure dramatically. When it files, the engine cranks, but will not start. You are stranded immediately. Current prices for quality replacements for common GM, Ford, and Dodge platforms run $80 to $180. Store it in its original packaging in a cool, dry location, away from direct sunlight. Shelf life stored correctly is 10 years or more. Part 2. The crankshaft position sensor. This small electronic sensor tells the engine computer the exact position of the crankshaft, so it can time fuel injection and ignition. When it files, which it does suddenly and without warning, the engine shuts off completely, often at highway speed. It will crank but not start, or start briefly and immediately stall. For most common truck platforms, this part costs $15 to $45. It weighs almost nothing. It takes up no space. There is no reason not to have 2 of them on your shelf right now. Part 3. The mass airflow sensor. This sensor measures the volume of air entering the engine so the computer can calculate the correct fuel delivery. When it fails or becomes contaminated, fuel economy drops dramatically. The engine runs rough, and eventually it throws a check engine code and enters reduced power mode. For common truck platforms, quality replacements cost $40 to $90. Unlike the fuel pump, this one often fails gradually, which means it is frequently misdiagnosed and frequently triggers expensive and unnecessary repairs before someone identifies the actual problem. Part 4. The serpentine belt and tensioner. This is the belt that drives your alternator, power steering pump, air conditioning compressor, and water pump simultaneously. When it files, everything stops at once. You lose power steering. Your battery stops charging, and within minutes, your engine overheats. A quality belt and tensioner for most truck platforms costs $35 to $65 together. This is the single cheapest insurance policy on this list. Store the belt in a sealed bag away from ozone. Sources like electric motors do not store it in a coil. Keep it flat or in a large loop. Part 5. The throttle position sensor. This sensor tells the engine computer where your accelerator pedal is. When it files, and it fails most commonly in trucks with high mileage that see significant temperature swings, the engine surges, hesitates, or simply refuses to accelerate properly. In drive-by-wire trucks built after 2004, a failed throttle position sensor triggers limp mode and limits you to roughly 20 miles per hour, regardless of how hard you press the pedal. For common platforms, quality replacements cost $25 to $65. This is the part that turns a running truck into a vehicle that can technically move, but cannot function safely on any road with traffic. Here is how you execute the stockpile correctly. First, identify your exact truck, year, make, model, engine size, and whether it is 2-wheel or 4-wheel drive. These details matter because the same truck model built in different years can take completely different parts. Second, use RockAuto as your primary source. Not because it is the cheapest on every single part, but because it lists multiple quality tiers for each application and shows you real-time stock levels. When you see a part listed as low stock, that is your signal to buy immediately. Third, store everything in original manufacturer packaging inside a plastic storage bin with a sealed lid. Add a silica gel desiccant packet to absorb moisture. Label the bin with the vehicle it serves, the part name, and the date purchased. Write the installation torque specs on the bag in permanent marker so you have them when you need them. The total investment for all 5 parts across most common truck platforms runs $200 to $450, depending on your specific application. That is less than the labor cost for a single diagnostic visit to the dealer. And it is the difference between a truck that keeps you mobile when the supply chain fails and a $35,000 paperweight sitting in your driveway waiting for a part that is 9 months out. If you own a truck, and nobody has told you this before, that is not an accident. The automotive industry profits from reactive repairs, not proactive ones. The moment you build a parts shelf, you stop being a customer who can be stranded and financially pressured in a moment of crisis. You become a truck owner who cannot be held hostage by a supply chain, a dealership, or a 9-month back order. Hit subscribe. Every week, one cover the supply chain vulnerabilities, mechanical traps, and preparedness strategies that the automotive industry does not want truck owners to understand. And if you want to know which 5 tools every truck owner needs to install any of these parts themselves, without a dealership, without a shop, and without a single special tool, watch the video on your screen right now.